College Football with Sam is the best YouTube channel for Big Ten football. And I am very proud of that fact, and I can say that objectively. However, I will also come to you all in a moment of vulnerability and say that there is a reason why College Football with Sam is the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube and not the best college football channel on YouTube. It's because of games like these. I predicted Michigan to go 12-0 in the regular season, beat Penn State, and beat Ohio State. I predicted Ohio State to go 11-1 and only lose to Michigan, but beat Penn State, beat Wisconsin, and beat Notre Dame, and everyone else. I predicted Penn State to go 9-3. I thought that Michigan State would be better than they were, but Mel Tucker, that incident, Penn State, nonetheless, was still a top 10 team as I viewed them in the preseason. I've been pretty accurate with the big picture in the Big Ten for this year and in prior years as well, though I have always had my own mistakes and predictions that didn't turn out to be true, as has everyone, when looking back at their preseason predictions. I was fairly confident this season, however, looking at the SEC, that Georgia was in a tier of their own, and that Georgia was only going to be taken down by someone outside of the SEC. Alabama had lost a ton of production from last season. I liked Jalen Milroe entering this year, and despite a very early slump, well, you can laugh that away because he was the better quarterback on the field tonight. I thought that Georgia would go 13-0, win the SEC, and just like in 2021, I saw that Georgia analytically was better than Alabama, and I went with that. And I ignored the fact, probably because Saban lost to Sarkisian this year and lost Jimbo Fisher in 2021. Saban's no longer undefeated against his former assistants. I forgot that Saban typically has the number of his former assistants. And Alabama, I think, does not have the same ceiling that Georgia does. I do not think they are on the same tier as Georgia in general. And maybe I'm going to get flack for saying that. But that doesn't matter, because what matters is what you do on the field. That's what matters. You know, TCU wasn't the same caliber of a team that Alabama was last year, but they deserved to get into the playoff instead of Alabama because of their body of work. They only had one loss. They lost in their conference championship game, and they went undefeated in the regular season. Meanwhile, Alabama was sloppy. They relied on one quarterback, Bryce Young, and even Nick Saban said that, and they lost 2 games. Alabama, in this game, after the first initial Georgia touchdown drive, put the key in the car and turned it on. And they never stopped. They had every counterpunch in this game. And they played some of the best football they have all season long. This is a different team than the one that got dominated by Texas early this season. And before we resume this video, please hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you can help us reach 20,000 subscribers by the end of the college football season. But seriously, when watching this game initially, was only half paying attention to it, especially after that first touchdown drive, because in my mind I expected Georgia to march down the field again and to take control of this game. I thought that Georgia, their elite secondary, was going to eat up an Alabama offense that relied on chunk passing plays. Well, that didn't happen. And Georgia's defensive line, though I knew it was weaker than previous Georgia D-lines, it's not impressive at stopping the run, it's not impressive at rushing the passer, I thought that Alabama's offensive line was weak enough to be exploited. Well, I was wrong. Because much like Washington did to Oregon last night, Alabama at the end of the game rammed the ball down Georgia's throat when it mattered. And Georgia's defense couldn't stop them. They couldn't because they have Nazir Stackhouse, and they have Warren Brinson, and they have Chaz Chambliss. You don't have Nakobe Dean. You don't have Jalen Carter. You don't have Trayvon Walker. You don't have elite first-round all-pro NFL level defensive linemen or linebackers. You don't. And what Alabama has is toughness. They don't have Jahmyr Gibbs. They don't have Derrick Henry. They don't have college Najee Harris. And at quarterback, Jalen Milroe is great, but he is far from his potential. Taking a long time to diagnose opposing defenses, wide receivers are wide open, and he's not hitting them or taking time to hit them, but he's growing in every game that he plays in. And there is a maturity about him that I really like. And next season, Jalen Milroe is going to be an elite quarterback. He might be an elite quarterback right now, but because of the statistics and also because of the games we watched him play early in the season, it will be hard to process that. But Jalen Milroe was a better quarterback than Carson Beck tonight. He was. Jalen Milroe making a long run of 30 yards to really punch Georgia's defense in the mouth. Making sometimes underwhelming throws, but other times doing what he should do, his job, and getting the ball to receivers in space to pick up gains. And after that initial touchdown by Georgia, Alabama led the rest of the way. It was impressive. In 2021, I picked Georgia to win, seeing that they were the better team, and I did the same this season, and I'm 0-2 in picking Georgia versus Alabama matchups. In fact, I'm 0-3 because then I picked Alabama in 2021 in the national championship game to win, and I was wrong. So I'm not very good at predicting Georgia-Alabama games, and that is why I said what I said early in the video. College Football with Sam is an awesome Big Ten football YouTube channel, and I'm still pretty knowledgeable about the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12, as are my subscribers. But it is more of a Big Ten football channel than anything else for a reason. Regardless of your fan base, though, I would love for you to subscribe and like the video, share it around, and join the channel, because this college football playoff is going to be entertaining. It's the final 4-team playoff. We don't know if the committee will let Florida State in, assuming they beat Louisville. If they lose, they're definitely out. There are going to be some teams tomorrow in all likelihood that are very unhappy with their placement. And I guess all I can say is for Georgia, they need absolute chaos in order to get in. The three-peat is likely done. And Nick Saban, funny enough, potentially could be the coach to nail that hope in the coffin. Nick Saban now is 5-1 against Kirby Smart. And with an offensive line that has allowed Milroe on the season to be sacked 34 times and 38 times, including this matchup against Georgia, a run game for Alabama that struggles, that labors to average 4 yards per carry. They average 4.5 yards per carry this season. A team that hasn't not even passed for 300 attempts. A defense that has struggled against Auburn, struggled against Tennessee. A defense that got beheaded by Texas. They came to play, and they played their best game. And this is, with this win, this is Nick Saban's best coaching job. Nick Saban isn't going anywhere. This is a team that has virtually no production from last season. A team that does not have an elite receiver room, an elite running back room. There isn't much elite about this team. There isn't, outside of Will Reichard and, in my opinion, outside of the secondary. There isn't much elite about this Alabama team. And yet they won. And yet they're 12-1. And yet, because they're Alabama, because they have the most talented roster in the history of college football, according to the blue chip ratio, and because, look, I don't think they're the best team in America, and I will say that here, but they have the best coach in America. And if you have the best coach in America, you can do anything. You can win it all. Alabama, they have to hope that they get in, because if Florida State wins, if Michigan wins, that's 3 13-0 teams plus Texas, a team that's 12-1, who dominated in their game today. That was not close with Oklahoma State, and they have the head-to-head win. This is a good Alabama team. And this year embodies why the 12-team playoff is happening. I was always in favor of the 8 or 16-team playoff. But 12 is something. Because right now, Oregon is a team who I think could compete in the playoffs. Georgia? Oh, heck yeah. Georgia definitely could compete. They're a good team. I think Georgia is a elite, near elite team this season. Alabama. I will frankly tell you, Alabama deserves to get in the college football playoff. The problem is there might be 4 teams who are even more deserving of getting in the college football playoff. Florida State, if they win, I don't care that they're on their 3rd or 2nd string quarterback. They're 13-0, and look at Ohio State and what they did in 2014. Florida State has enough playmakers to do something in the college football playoff, even if it is unlikely that they can win it all. Michigan, they're extremely deserving. They're 2-0 versus top 10 teams, and they're consistently the most dominant team in the country. Washington has the best strength of record from a resume standpoint of facing consistent top 25 and top 10 teams and facing a deep schedule. Like, there are so many teams. I forgot to mention Texas even. Texas, they deserve a chance. Potentially the best win in college football with a road win over an Alabama team that's now 12-1. There are so many teams. 1 loss, some that are 2 losses, mainly Oregon. Maybe there's an argument for Penn State, but probably not. That could deserve to be in the playoff just based off of their talent, based off of their efficiency, their physicality, their characteristics, their skills. This would be a great year for an 8 or 12 or 16 team playoff. It would be phenomenal. And part of me would like to guarantee you that with that playoff field, there would be a whole lot of people that would get the national championship pick wrong. But we have the 4-team playoff, so it is what it is. Alabama might get in the college football playoff regardless, but Florida State or Michigan losing would help their case. And Georgia's chances of three-peating are over unless both Michigan and FSU lose. Washington and Michigan are definitely going to be higher seeded than Michigan at 13-0. Florida State, maybe they won't be, but Texas with that head-to-head win over Alabama is going to get preferential treatment over Alabama, and Alabama will get preferential treatment over Georgia. Georgia needs some kind of major upset to happen. And even then, I think they need 2 major upsets to happen tonight. After that initial drive, I know I was really talking about the ramifications of the game to start off this video more than the actual game, but here we are. That initial drive was 8 plays, 83 yards, 4 minutes of clock burned off with a Kendall Milton 17-yard run, who's dominant. And based off of that drive, you could turn your head to your neighbor or your wife or your husband or your child or whomever was watching the game with you, or maybe you think to yourself, oh man, Georgia's about to take over. Well, Georgia, I said to a friend, remember, they scored first in 2021. Let's see what happens. And lo and behold, in that sense, this game was similar to the 2021 game. Georgia scores first, they look like the better team, and then reality sets in, and Nick Saban gets out the brass knuckles and just relentlessly beats the puppy to death. That's what happened. After that initial touchdown, Alabama outscores Georgia 27-17 in the game. They go on a 17-0 run to close out the first half, and Georgia has to play catch-up. It was a similar story to Oregon-Washington last night, except I think Oregon-Washington played a better game. I think that the Pac-12 and SEC championship game, and this might sound like heresy to say this, but I think there were similar levels of football played in those championship games. Alabama and Georgia, I think, having the better defenses than Oregon and Washington, but Washington and Oregon having the better offenses. And what also helped Alabama was special teams play. Georgia lost by 3, and because Georgia had more penalties and they didn't have the same kicker, Georgia lost by 3. Peyton Woodring missed a field goal. And a lot of that was due to a false start. Georgia lost the penalty battle. They had 5 penalties for 56 yards. Alabama only had 3 for 36. Georgia had a fumble, which gifted Alabama 3 points in their own territory. Alabama won the time of possession battle. Alabama ran for more yards, and they had 2.8 yards per carry. Georgia only had 2.5 yards per carry. And Alabama and Georgia basically had the same amount of yards per pass attempt. Georgia just had 6 more attempts than Alabama did, and consequentially had 51 more passing yards. Both teams were 2 of 2 on fourth down. Alabama was 3 of 13 on third down. Georgia was 4 of 12 on third down. The turnover, Alabama's superior special teams unit, and I would say Nick Saban having that coaching edge over Kirby Smart, and Georgia not being 100% were big factors in this game. Ladd McConkey was constantly limping around. Brock Bowers is clearly not the same threat that he was before his injury. I wonder if he rushed himself back out on the field, but I don't know. I'm not his doctor. It's just speculation. And Amarius Mims being out and having Xavier Truss replace him that's a big detriment, because Amarius Mims is a future NFL offensive tackle. And Van Pran, great center. But Georgia wanted to get on the outside. They wanted to do those toss plays, and they weren't working. And Mike Bobo just, kept calling him. And he played into the hands of an Alabama team that I think, similarly to Georgia in some senses, might be better on the outside and in the pass defense than they are in the run defense. So Alabama schematically called the better game. Alabama was more disciplined, more controlled, less emotional, more put together, and they did their job. They did. Nick Saban isn't going anywhere. He isn't, and he's going to be a thorn in Kirby Smart and Georgia's side until he retires. Alabama was tougher, and they had a superior game plan, and Georgia's injuries and lack of experiences versus great defense hurt their chances to win. It was either Josh Pate or College Football Nerds talking about how Georgia hadn't been tested offensively. Look at Alabama. Alabama played Texas. They were tested on the offensive and defensive sides of the football. Michigan played Penn State. Penn State's defense tested Michigan's offense, and Ohio State tested Michigan on both sides of the football. Same with Michigan to Penn State and Ohio State. Oregon and Washington have been testing each other all season long. And you look in the ACC, and Florida State's been basically testing themselves week after week. And Texas, to a certain degree, the same thing, but especially with Oklahoma and also playing Alabama in that road win. Georgia, outside of Missouri, really hasn't been pushed by another team. They haven't. And I think you saw the consequences of just being that much of a superior team compared to all your opponents. And then you go from having a coaching advantage, a roster advantage, and a depth advantage to having all of those things neutered or favoring the other side like that. And Alabama wins 27-24. They also had one more first down, and Alabama they controlled the game. I know that they only ran for 2.8 yards per carry, but the toughness of Roydell Williams, the toughness of Jam Miller, and Jalen Milroe, despite being sacked 4 times, he was not scared to run the ball and to sacrifice his body to pick up gains. It was an impressive effort by Milroe, an impressive effort by Tommy Rees, Nick Saban, by Kevin Steele, the defensive coordinator. And Georgia, defensively, they are who I thought they were. Great in the secondary. The only reason Alabama was able to get passes in the secondary was because Georgia's D-line couldn't do anything. They got pressure a few times, but when they didn't get pressure, Milroe had endless time in the pocket. He can use his legs to extend plays. And Georgia's interior D-line is not strong. It's good, but it's not elite. And an Alabama offensive line that's been improving, along with a running back room with powerful, tough runners, is going to match up well with that. Along with, a mobile quarterback who's a bigger version of Lamar Jackson in terms of physicality. Offensively, Georgia was weird. I have not seen Georgia's offense play in this inefficient and almost confuzzled or confused way in a while. I mean, Georgia's offense looked like a deer in a headlights. Third and short, try and run the ball behind a Joe Moore award level O-line. You can't do anything. And now you burn clock. You have to go for it on fourth down. And that was critical. Kirby Smart having to call that timeout in the end, Georgia having to go no huddle, and in other parts, Alabama just getting behind the lines of scrimmage, especially on the exterior of Georgia's line and on the outside, and blowing up plays. That was huge. Brock Bowers doesn't look 100%, neither does Ladd McConkey, and Amarius Mims wasn't either. And I hope they get healthy. And Carson Beck, 21 of 29 for 243 yards and 8.4 yards per pass attempt. That's good, but it wasn't enough for Georgia to overcome what was a great effort by Alabama. Jalen Milroe, Roydell Williams, Isaiah Bond with 5 receptions for 79 yards. That receiver room for Alabama, they weren't perfect. There were some balls that could have been caught that Alabama's receivers just don't have the hands or the awareness for, like Washington's or Ohio State's do, but they got the job done, and that's the important thing. It's like with Washington or Florida State. Continue to win. It doesn't matter to a certain degree at this point in the season with the competition you're playing. It doesn't matter if you win by 3 or 30. A win is a win because now you are facing ranked opponents and you are facing teams that, like with Georgia, I think Georgia would still beat Alabama 5, 6, or 7 times out of 10. I still think Georgia in a power ranking sense is better than Alabama, but it doesn't matter. And Alabama right now is a more deserving team to have a chance for the national championship than Georgia. That's all I have to say in this video. I could talk about this more, but I think my time has come here. Thank you for watching this video. I don't make content about the SEC very often, so if you're an SEC fan, thank you for listening to an outsider's perspective. Thanks to Crash2488, Anthony McDowell, and Justin Rogg for being Heisman patrons. Thanks to Spencer Bringhurst, Noah DDLC, and SFS Inverted for being All-American patrons. And thanks to Will Loftus, Gabriel Calendar, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Chris Lane, Austin Christmas, and Zubin Zah for being all-conference patrons. Have a great day, guys, and you know what? Roll Tide. You proved me wrong, and when someone proves me wrong, they impress me. Have a great day, and I will see you all around. Bye-bye.